Welcome to the fast break. Got Leslie and Tata checking in. We've got Brian in the building and Mpumi. How are you guys doing?
Yes,
How's it
sir.
going?
Chilling, bro. You all right?
It's just great to have a fast break show with two Golden State Warriors and an LA Laker. It's almost like
Perfect show.
how were we unable to arrange this in the past?
I tried to avoid it for a whole year. I did the best I could.
We
I felt sick every time. Every time it was you guys, I just felt sick.
we were unable to get this done. It's Brian, great to see you. Bumi and I were just coming off
Oh,
of a championship run. I know we had a program and an agenda for the show, but I would like to actually just delve into the 2022 season and the
oh my goodness.
championship that the Golden State
We're on the
Warriors.
clock. We're on the clock. We're on the clock.
Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me. We got a jam-packed show. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on Yo TV. We got a jam-packed show. And let's kick off with a touch on the NBA, right? Understanding what's going on in the conferences. And I want us to delve into really the teams that we all know. These are the stories of the day. These are the stories of the week. These are the teams that currently what's going on with them is the most exciting. And where I want to start is with our one of our beloved panelists, Koki, who's not here right now. Her Brooklyn Nets right now are kind of rolling. If you
I
watch
couldn't
Fast
allow
Break a
Kofi on the
couple
show. Couldn't allow it.
if
Couldn't allow it.
yeah, we had to strategically select the panel. Even we'd rather go two Golden State Warriors versus the Lakers than allow Koki on the show. Now, if you've been watching Fast Break 4, but you know that we've pretty much dug into the Brooklyn Nets a couple of times. I think their history is very much, they started off, of course, with James Harden, KD, and Kyrie Irving. Highly criticized for not being a good defensive team at some point in time. I think the injury conversation is there as well. I'm going to put it out to you, Mpumi. What are your thoughts on the Brooklyn Nets, where they are now? Do you think, like, if we just think about what they've been through, do you think this is a turning point for them? And do you think the season do you think this could be the season that we at least see a deep playoff run?
Yeah, definitely. I think when Kyrie and KD decided to go to Brooklyn, this is what we expected. For the past few seasons, it really hasn't lived up to what everybody thought it would be. And now, for the first time, this team is getting rolling. They've gotten some incredible support pieces around them, and they've
Mm.
created this chemistry now. And so I think that this is what they went to Brooklyn to do. I don't think by any stretch of imagination they're winning a championship this year, but I do see them making a deep playoff run.
Okay. Brian, I think we saw obviously with Brooklyn, one of the key things we saw with Brooklyn was there was that coaching change, right? Steve Nash got the job, and now we see the change in the Brooklyn Nets coach. Who do you think? I mean, do you think that that's a big change? Do you think that that's a big factor to what's going on with Brooklyn? A lot of people are crediting that change.
I mean, I don't know how long Vaughn has been coaching, right? But I feel like he's paid his dues more. He sat on the bench for a while. He was an assistant coach before getting into the hot seat where with Steve Nash, he just became he wasn't head coach. He was a head coach immediately. So I do think that there's a little bit of there's more credit given to the current head coach just by virtue of him having experience and having worked with various players over various seasons versus, like I said, Steve Nash. I do think that was a big part of the change, right? Because looking at when it started turning around and when the turning point was, it kind of was at that point more or less. Obviously, there were a bunch of issues with Kyrie Irving having this, that, and the next issue, and him being suspended. And also, Kyrie Irving has he stayed out of the spotlight for a while, and I do think that's the biggest catalyst to their performance. Right? I think the stop-start of him being there, not being there, playing away games, not playing home games, um, Kyrie, just all the
Sounds like
issues
some
he had at
load.
that
That
time.
sounds some load management. Some load management.
That's the Clippers model, isn't it? So he's been quiet right now as far as all that's concerned, and I think that's a big part of it because he's just been able to be consistently around his team. They've all stayed healthy. They've all played extremely well, and I just think that they get along a whole lot more than before. Right? I used to when they'd ask KD about Kyrie and the situation, he'd seem frustrated. He'd get over it and just not really want to entertain the question. But now there's no dramas around the team besides their success, and I think Les, you once said it about your Golden State Warriors. I even hate the word. When you said that, look, winning just solves issues, right? Winning just kind of repairs all these kinds of issues that a team has. And I think them going 18-2 in their past 20 games, that's huge. Bumi, I'm kind of interested in why you think they can't go the whole way, right? I mean, they're currently they're the hottest team in the NBA. They're playing well. They aren't beating scrubs. They're beating some top flight teams. Why do you feel like they aren't going to go all the way?
So I think there's some really good teams that are just clicking right now, both in the West and the Eastern Conference. I think the Celtics were so great last year. They're going to try and come back. I think there's a couple of teams in the West that are looking at a championship. And I just don't think Brooklyn's at the point where they're really playoff tested. And so I don't see them making a deep run in the first year that they really, really fully a unit in the playoffs.
Okay, that's fair enough. And I think even with Ben Simmons, I checked his numbers, right? Sorry, Les. I checked Ben Simmons' numbers, and he's not averaging his career number. I think he's got
that's where I was going.
7 and something like that. So it's not like he's been the most impressive. But I mean, 7, 6, and 7. That's not bad either, right? Obviously, he's never been a top flight scorer. His career average is 15. So I do think that it's not the same team. Defensively as well, from the games I've seen. Obviously, of the 20 games, I've only seen a handful. But I do think that it's not the same team that it was. And again, them clicking on all cylinders like this, I kind of give them. I can see them getting to the conference finals at the very least.
I must say, the coaching change with Jacques Vaughn coming in, my feeling is the thing that he changed is exactly that. It's the defense element of things. And Brian, I know your culture is offense over defense, but I don't think that team was ever. I don't think we ever said that they were struggling, offensively, but they could barely stop teams from scoring. I think that's what Jacques Vaughn has definitely done for them. Ben Simmons, I think, is following the Draymond Green model. What do you think, Mpumi? Like, I think he's kind of following the Draymond Green model. I've got 2 incredible wing players or 2 guys that can score significantly on the wing. Should I be the guy driving the ball every single possession? Probably not. I think that's the model that he's followed.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. But I also think, I don't know if you've seen this, but there is a very different sort of thing in the way that international players sort of play basketball. Draymond Green plays like an international basketball player. If you think about the things that he does, US basketball players play in a very different way. So I think you're right. Maybe it is the Draymond Green model, but I also think it's international basketball model. He comes out of the Australian system. So I think he's just that guy. You're right. He doesn't think he doesn't need to do too much. He's allowing the game to come to him finally, right? He had so much pressure in the beginning of his career to play a particular way. And now in the setup that he is, it's great for him. It works for him. And he's able to kind of thrive. Maybe not thrive in the way that people wanted him to in terms of numbers, but for him, he's having a comfortable season and is playing a really comfortable role.
Yeah, no, true. And maybe just as a final note on Brooklyn, right? Kyrie Irving, all the way from the vaccination issues to the anti-Semitic issues, he's up to re-sign at the end of the season. I mean, so far, do you believe Brooklyn re-signs Kyrie Irving?
Oh, absolutely.
How can they not? It's Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, but guys, it wasn't the language around Kyrie. The language around Kyrie at least 6 months ago was nowhere that you go for an absolutely not. We had Brian's Lakers foaming at the mouth because this wasn't a guy. It was a gamble. He was a gamble. Are you guys saying that?
Look, I'll say this. Sometimes when it comes to a contract, you just don't want other teams to have certain players. As the Brooklyn Nets, you can't afford to go now and lose to Kyrie in the same conference, or you can't afford to have him now be the matchup in the NBA Finals and he beats you. He's still good enough to play at a very high all-star level, I'd say. He's still good enough to help a championship team get to the finals, win a championship. You can't afford to let that go, especially if he's paid his dues and he's made up for all the things that all the issues you kind of raised, right? I think him having paid his dues, him having done what was expected from the ownership and what the owner insisted he does. If he's apologized, you kind of have to now, forgive and let go and obviously give him a fair chance. And I think based on how he's playing right now and how the Brooklyn Nets are performing, I can't see. And another thing, right? KD and Kyrie are best mates. So if you let Kyrie go, you run the risk of losing Kevin Durant as well. So it's not just about Kyrie per se. It's about which teams get better or who else you might lose and cut your franchise. So it's a bit of. I think they're re-signing with a no-brainer before the end of the season. To Kyrie, come through, boy. Let's make a deal. That's my fault.
And also, who would you get to replace Kyrie in that setup? Like we're saying, they're finally hitting their stride. They're finally in a place where they look like they can compete for a championship in 2-3 years, right? Who are you going to get to play the role that Kyrie plays within that team?
Yeah.
There are a lot of point guards.
My opinion on Kyrie being, I think the playoffs is going to be a big determining factor as to whether or not they go through with it. Like Brooklyn still made the playoffs last season and they crumbled quite. I mean, I know there was a variety of things impacting them, but I still think the measure for the Brooklyn Nets front office will be, do we at least make a deep playoff run? Because that's the thing that we haven't seen from them. That's just my view. That's just my view, right? Let's go over to the Western Conference, to Brian's.
Uh, uh, uh.
So LeBron James, what's the number? 38 since 38. Been averaging 38
I'm
points
saying,
since he
man.
turned
I'm
38.
saying, man.
Apparently, his ankle is, no one is sure. I
At the age
think
of 38,
we
my
have.
man, you gotta take a day or two. Man. You gotta manage that load every now and again, man. He's old.
In fact, on that, Darvin Ham made the statement that, I mean, the press asked him, are you comfortable riding LeBron? Like, are you comfortable making him play the minutes that he's playing? Darvin Ham's response was, I'm going to keep riding him because, physically, he's capable. Brian,
I
what are
hate
your
that.
thoughts on that kind of statement? Like, I just want to
I
know
hate
because you
that, man.
opened it up already. He's 38 years old. Undoubtedly, the things that he's doing are incredible. But I mean, now you're talking about an 82 game season playoff run potentially. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I think when a coach says stuff like, "Look, you got LeBron James, his body's in good shape, and he's got the luxury of riding him because he takes care of himself," they're focused on using LeBron James 100%, but on now focused on adding other pieces to support him because he's so good, he's so healthy, he's got all this longevity. They are focused on how much more can we squeeze from him versus if we get him support, can we maybe have him for longer? So I just don't like that thinking. I think it's very short sighted because we've seen LeBron James over the past 3, 4 years, 2, 3 years maybe, where he's getting freak injuries, right? The most random injuries that are prolonged and he's out for a while. And we just can't afford that. The more you play, the higher the risk of injury. I think it's a wild statement to make, especially with someone playing this well. The idea to get him support versus make, and I understand AD's been injured. We don't have a choice. He's the best player on the team at the moment, but there's many teams that are struggling that are in the same position as us who aren't playing their best players for 38 to 42 minutes. I think it's crazy. I think it's way too much. I don't like it.
Definitely. Bumi, are the LA Lakers going to the NBA playoffs?
Heck no.
Oh,
No, I do say that
okay.
with a pinch of salt, though. I do say that with a pinch of salt because I do know who LeBron James is, and I think that if AD can stay healthy, they can. I definitely think, you've seen the numbers. The race is so close in the West between
It's
teams
mad.
that are in position for the playing game and teams that are actually making those last couple of spots. It's a really, really close race. And so the Lakers, even though right now they're at 12th, I mean, they're what, 3 games behind the Warriors who are in 6th.
Mhm.
So it's not an absolute no. I'd like to see them go to the playoffs. I won't lie. I'm not the biggest Lakers fan, but I would like LeBron in his last couple of seasons to play longer into the season.
Definitely.
I'm sorry to jump in there, but my bad. I would like to get the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs. That's what I would like to happen. And I'm a host
I hear
every
Why?
you,
single
Brian,
game.
but Brian, I hear you, but like it's probably virtually impossible because they
Yeah,
might end
by
up
virtue of
close
the
to one
season,
another. So it
6 and
might be maybe
5
a
or
Western
something
Conference final, which would be electrifying.
bigger. That'll be the biggest. Yeah, I'd
Unfortunately,
love
we'd have no, we dust you though. Just to be clear, we dust you. Sa,
it.
sa, sa, sa.
Bet money,
But the
bet
Lakers have
money,
won. The
bet.
Lakers have won five. The Lakers have won five in a row. Well, 5-1. Let's say they 5-1, right? So they had won five in a row. Things were going well for them, and now the injury thing again. Brian, from your end, like, do you believe? Are you? Because look, we're still approaching the All Star break, right? So you still got a whole second half of the season. Are you concerned about the Lakers' health in general, or are you enthusiastic? And would you rather have them have a wind down towards the All Star game and restart again? Kind of start with that second half of the season, a la Boston Celtics last season, or do you believe it's like as soon as we can, let's get guys back, let's shake off some of the rust? There was a season where I think Tim Duncan was a bit in his later years, so it was a different reason. But I remember Greg Pop said Tim ain't playing in the All Star game. They said Tim checking in. as a starter,
And then
so he
sits
gets
down.
his starter
Yeah.
nod, but he's checking out because I've got a different goal. Do you think that the Lakers could maybe look at something like that? Is that something you'd like to see from the Lakers?
I think LeBron James would say no. I think LeBron James, if he's healthy, he's playing that All-Star game. I think he's got that MJ thing where it's more about the fans and making sure that whoever came out to see him gets to see him. So I definitely think that LeBron James would be the first one to say, hell no, I'm playing the All-Star game. But no, I think of all the teams, of all the big name teams or the teams that are within the 12th seed and better, the Lakers probably need every single game more than the rest of them, right? Because we're so up and down. We might win 5 in a row, drop 3. We might win 3 in a row, drop 6. So I think every single game matters more to us. A, because of how close the conference is, and B, because we're only starting to, well, from a fan's perspective, I'm only starting to believe now, this late in the season, that we might actually be good. Like, we might actually be in a position to make the playoffs and actually beat certain teams, especially if we get the right seeding. So I know a lot of guys always talk about how, look, seeding isn't the most important thing and all that, but I think if we can get the right matchups and we can win certain series quicker, rather. So I don't think the Lakers should try to rest these guys. I think every single game matters, and we got to play. Every single one of them got to play. Russ, AD, and LeBron. But in that same breath, we are one injury away from our season being over, right? If the wrong, like AD fell, it took LeBron James a couple of games to get himself right. If LeBron James goes down, it's going to be a different story. So it's kind of touch and go for us, but I would rather have my guys playing as many games as possible, winning them early, right? That Golden State model where third quarter, early in the fourth, they're done and they're getting their rest. I'd prefer that versus any of those guys sitting down. That's just what I think about the Lakers right now. We need them playing.
Okay. I want to hear from both of you at the end of January what your prediction is for the Lakers seeding. Before you give your prediction, I'm going to tell you who they're playing for the duration of the month. Dallas. I'm gonna say everyone, right? So I don't even let me not pick specifics. I was gonna do specifics, but let me say everyone. And this is the order: Dallas, Phoenix, Houston, Sacramento, Memphis, Portland, the Clippers, San Antonio, Boston, Brooklyn, and the Knicks. Let me yell out some of the big heavies. I would say Dallas. These are teams that are maybe in the playoffs. Just teams.
6 of them are heavy. 6 of those 8 are heavy.
Dallas, Philly, Memphis, Boston, Brooklyn. It's 5.
And Sacramento. Don't play with Sacramento.
And Sacramento with Mike Brown coaching them up.
The way Sacramento is playing basketball right now.
Exactly.
I
So
can give you an answer. Lakers will be top 6 in the Western Conference.
at the end of January.
Top 6 easily.
End of January.
Or number 6, I guess. Not even easily. We might be number 6.
That's still in. It's in it. What is your Lakers seeding approaching the month of the All-Star game?
I've got to say I don't see them going higher than 10th. I think they'll still be sitting in that 10 to 12 spot. Just because you're looking at the teams that are a little bit ahead of them, right? So, okay, fine. The Warriors are going to go on the road again. We've been horrible on the road. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough days on the road. I mean, we're 3-16 on the road. So that's going to be really, really tough. But the Suns are up there. I think they can beat the Blazers. But I don't see these standings changing enough for the Lakers to be in playoff spot going into the All-Star break.
AD comes back in a couple of days. By the end of the season. I want to throw it. I want to chime in on that one because when I look at it, and Bumi, actually, what you just said about who's above them, I'm sorry. Like I'm just thinking about who can fail. I look one above the Lakers and I see Utah. Healthy Lakers is still better than Utah. Healthy Portland. Portland had that early spurt in the season. I don't know what that was. It's the same fluke we see every season. I don't believe in them. Minnesota, you can't have 2 bigs and Rudy Gobert. He has shocking hands. Tried to run the floor as a point guard and missed a point blank layup. Phoenix, they're just crumbling. I know it's injury ridden also with Phoenix, so I also excuse them for whatever they're going through with their injuries. But it just doesn't look like things will get better. I don't even know when those guys are coming back. Devin Booker and Chris Paul. And DeAndre Ayton is also not playing tonight. Right? Okay, yeah.
And then, I mean, the LA Clippers, load managed. I look above it and I'm like, the Lakers have a realistic 7th seed. Like there's a 7th seed actually waiting for them.
But
And
not
that's
with the teams
one
that
game
they're
away.
playing.
Like it's literally
Yeah.
one game away.
But you have to
For
look
me,
at the strength of their schedule, right? And they're coming up
Yeah,
against a
that's
really tough schedule for the rest of Jan. So you can look at those teams, but you can't look at it in isolation. You have to look at those teams and then see like this. The Lakers' schedule coming up is just it's nuts. So I don't see them winning too many of those games.
I'm backing my boys. I'm backing my boys.
6. Brian saying 6. Guys, on that note, actually looking at that Western Conference and some of the teams I just yelled out, what do you guys think is the reason that this, it's about from 12 to, look, OKC, 18
wide
and 22,
open.
Guys,
Wide
they could also
open.
even get a taste. They really could get a taste. What do you guys think it is? What's happening in the
From
West?
who?
From let's call it, I'm going to say I'm even including Sacramento in this. I would say from 5 to 13 in the West. You need one good month and you can be a fourth or 5th seed in the West. What do you guys think has
You need
changed?
a
Do you
good
guys
week.
think the West is
It's
a
not
weaker
even just
conference?
from 5. Because you're talking about 5. Sacramento is only 2 games behind the Mavs. And the Mavs are only 2 games behind the Pelicans. And then there's only 2 games separating the top 2 teams as well. So like the Western Conference is wide open. You know, the team at the top has 27 wins and the Lakers have 19 wins. Like that is not
far, right?
So anyone
I'm
could
saying-
end up anyway. And it's going to be really important how teams come out of the All-Star break.
I agree. I think you have a good month and you can easily be leading the West. But do you guys think there's something weaker? Is the Western Conference weaker than the East this season? Would you guys?
To me, this shows
Would that be?
right?
Huh?
This isn't a sign of weakness for me, right? The competition and it being this close is a sign of strength of conference. I think if it was further apart, then it would be kind of a weak conference. Even in the Eastern Conference, it's not as close, but it also isn't necessarily too far apart. It took Brooklyn winning 18 out of 20 games to go from 12th to 3rd. So it's not necessarily as close, but to me, it shows that the Western Conference isn't easy. It's tough for about 8 to 9 potential playoff contenders. For me, it's a tougher conference by far. Still.
Clearly a tougher conference. Okay.
Yeah, that's
guys. Well, now that we've taken a look at the conferences and taken a look at the specific teams in those conferences, let's go into the